Without further ado, we're going to be introducing Brent Grinna, our CEO and founder of EverTrue.
Was anybody listening to the new Taylor Swift album on their way, besides me? All right. Thank you all for being here. I'm so excited about this year's conference because we have seen so many amazing case studies and success stories emerge from this community over the last year in particular, that it's really an opportunity to share and learn from one another. And so I do want to make sure that we make the most of the digital communities that we all belong to as well. And I will be active on Twitter at Brent Grinna. The hashtag across social channels is going to be Raise 2019. And I want to get things started today with a exciting announcement around the first 40 under 40 that we just released yesterday. We solicited nominations from the advancement community, and I just want to take a minute. We had unbelievable response. This is the first time that we've done this. We're constantly being asked, hey, who are the up-and-coming leaders in this sector? And so we decided to ask all of you and gathered the data and just released this first 40 under 40, which includes alumni relations, annual giving, research, communications, major gifts across the office. And so we have a bunch of the 40 under 40 attendees here, and I would love for them to stand and just quickly be recognized. Congratulations. And be on the lookout for next year's nominations. Okay, so we're going to get things going on social media. We have a tradition here, unlike any other, to kick off Raise, which is known as the Inception Selfie. And this is a little complicated to pull off, but we've done it successfully. And so I'm going to ask everybody to stand up. And this is really simple. Stand up, open your app of choice, or at least pretend like you're opening your app of choice. Could be LinkedIn. I'm pro LinkedIn right now. Could be Twitter. But what we're going to do is really quickly, at the same time, take a selfie. All right. Everybody with me? All right. Get excited, all right? Let's go. We got this. 1, 2, 3. All right. Now. Oh, come on, Brent. I got to do that again. That's not going to work. All right. Anybody else need to redo? It's okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. And then just say why you came here, what you're looking to learn. Share it on the hashtag Raise 2019. And we're going to monitor that so that we can really understand why you're here. And if we can get to some of the specific goals, we will. I'm going to hit share. Awesome. There we go. Cool. So when I was thinking about the themes that I wanted to talk about in the kickoff, I was thinking a lot about some of the personal experiences that I had this summer. My wife and I grew up in Iowa, and we have 3 kids now, and we've been wanting to spend more time back where our families both are. And so we spent several weeks there this summer, and in doing that, I had a lot of back and forth between Iowa and Boston. Now, when I was there, one of the great experiences was that my kids launched their first entrepreneurial endeavor, which was the most successful sweet corn stand in Northeast Iowa. We really hit it out of the park. But as I was going back and forth from Iowa to Boston, it was really causing me to reflect just on the customer experience as it relates to travel and what we can draw from that as we think about creating a great donor experience. Now, for a long time, I was a very loyal United flyer, okay? I flew the friendly skies for years, but they just didn't seem that friendly. And eventually I went on to learn that they're really not that friendly and that they continually are ranked the worst airline in customer service. So it wasn't just me. There's data that backs it up. And eventually, in part being set up here in Boston, we made the switch to become JetBlue flyers. Okay, any JetBlue flyers here? All right. So the thing about JetBlue and other winning companies is that they really are leveraging data and technology to be able to deliver customer experiences where it really feels like they know you. And when I think about myself in the JetBlue flying pyramid, if you will, okay, I am a solid middle of the pyramid flyer, all right? I'm not a top flyer. I'm not a major flyer, but I'm a regular flyer at JetBlue. And the experience that I have received as a regular middle of the pyramid flyer for JetBlue is nothing short of remarkable. They know what seat I'm in. There's oftentimes a little note waiting for me. And like everybody at JetBlue, regardless of where you are in the flying pyramid, I get as many of these Terra chips as I want. And they're so good. And I always say, no, not today, and then I get a couple bags. But I think a lot about that because it's really customer-centric. And 10 years ago, 20 years ago, it wasn't possible. There wasn't technology that allowed a flight attendant on JetBlue who really doesn't know me to get to know a little bit about me and make me feel extra special and welcome enough that I'm telling hundreds of you about that experience right now, which is what has in part made JetBlue so successful. Now, we're going to do a little bit of live polling. If it doesn't work, we're just going to raise hands, but I think it's going to work. So I want everybody to go to slido.com. Just pull out your phone. It's very, very simple. You don't need to download anything. Just go to slido.com, and it's going to ask you to enter a code, and it's just going to be RAISE 2019. And the first question, I'll just give everybody a minute, but the first question I would like to know is, if you take away your advancement professional hat, okay, ignore your job for a minute, and think about your own college experience, where you went to college. In the last 12 months, have you been contacted by your alma mater and asked to give on a personal level? I thought this might be more like 99%, but most of you are being asked to donate. Some of you, even though you work in the sector that would be most inclined ever to participate to your alma mater, are not being asked to donate. Okay, 80-20. Let's go to the next question. In the last 12 months, have you been asked by somebody at your alma mater if there's anything they could do to help you advance your career? Has anybody reached out and said, hey, can I help you with your career? How are things going? Are there things we can do? Okay. 8% of people are saying yes, they've had some kind of outreach. So 80% being asked to give, 90% not being asked if there's ways that they can be supported professionally. Okay, let's go to the next question. In the last 12 months, has anybody from your college offered you free tickets, maybe to a game, an event, maybe a performance you might enjoy attending? Have they gone out of their way to welcome you into that community? So roughly 75, 25, 80, 20, where you're not being reached out to in that manner. So almost everybody being reached out to give, nobody being reached out proactively to receive career support, very few people getting proactive kind of value or benefits in this manner. Let's go to the next question. In the last 12 months, have you been given cool socks that represent your alma mater's brand? So roughly 80-20. All right, let's go to the next slide. So that is one thing we take. These are like our Terra chips at EverTrue. Like we hand out socks like JetBlue Terra chips. You should all have them now. If you don't, we'll make sure that you get them. You love the socks. I got them on right here. They're new raised socks. That's the first time. I think Amanda is here, actually. I'm sure she's super psyched that we shared this photo after the Case Summit earlier this year in Boston. So I think I don't want to paint a dire picture because, without a doubt, the overall revenue growth in this sector and the nonprofit sector more broadly has really been tremendous over the last 10 years in particular. So this is not that the sky is falling as it relates to the overall productivity of our advancement shops, but I do want to contrast my JetBlue experience with a recent experience that I had. It was 6:43 on a Tuesday night, and I got a call from that very familiar number in Providence, which coincidentally is where my college, Brown University, is based. And I didn't answer the phone, but I did take a screenshot of it. And at 7:17, one of my colleagues, who also went to Brown, took a screenshot of the call that he got. And what I was doing at 6:43 p.m. was getting my kids ready to bed and reading to them, okay? And I love my college. I named my company after our fight song. I mean, there's no doubt that I'm going to support them, but there could not be a worse time and a worse way at this point to engage me and reach me. And even if I was connected, if I had answered, 30% of the pledges that are received via channels like that are never fulfilled. And I'm sure some of you have updated stats that are maybe even more challenging than this. And even if I had talked to that student with their generic script that really reflected nothing about who I am, what I'm interested in, how I've been engaged with the institution over the years, that kid wouldn't even be able to reach out to me on LinkedIn and connect with me and stay in touch. I would never hear from that person again. And many of you probably heard the data or read about Stanford's decision to move away from that channel. And one of the things that they cited is through their alumni surveys, 8 people out of every 8 people who actually answered the calls and actually did make a gift, one had said, we don't, please don't, here's the gift, stop doing this, okay? And then by 2015, 3 out of people who actually answered and actually gave said, please stop doing this, okay? And they did stop doing it. But others haven't stopped doing it. And since 2015, when Stanford made that decision, one of our customers shared their data with us to show what is happening to their donor count over time via this specific channel. And I think that for all of the commentary about why participation rates are declining and whether millennials really want to give to their alma mater or not, I don't think enough is being said of have we modified the ways that we're reaching out to people in a manner that might actually allow us to grow our results. And I think that it's fair to say that overall this is not very donor-centric, okay? When you contrast it with what a middle-of-the-pyramid flyer experiences at JetBlue, there's really no comparison. But I'm very optimistic that we can change this. And I think that if we ran our major gift programs the way that we treat everybody else, higher ed revenue would not have increased in the way that it has. If our major gift officers could only call people at 6:43 p.m. with no context and no ongoing follow-up, it wouldn't be very successful. And so how can we learn from what works really well in this sector, what works really well in the for-profit sector, and create new experiences that are going to make people like me and you feel much more engaged with our own alma maters? Customer expectations have changed in part due to massive innovations in consumer technology, the way that we consume music, the way that we consume food. Everything is moving into a long-term subscription loyalty approach. And we're going to hear from some companies today who've done a great job embracing these trends. The organizations that did not embrace these trends have failed, okay? Many of us used to shop at the brands that are reflected here, okay? And for a long time, I think there's been an impression that maybe higher education is immune. Not anymore, all right? And we're not all going to be able to solve all of the challenges that are facing higher education, but there are two primary revenue streams: enrollment and fundraising revenue. And the people in this room and in your organizations have an opportunity to pull one of those really important levers, and we have to. We have to start embracing a modern customer journey. Most brands that you're going to hear from today and that many of you are loyal to have really taken this approach of a long-time, lifetime customer journey. How do we start? By getting you aware and interested in our brand, getting us to buy something, getting us to buy it again, getting us to expand our relationship, and ultimately, how do they get us to become advocates the way that I am for JetBlue right now, okay? And I think that there's a lot that can be applied as we think about creating a modern alumni journey. Instead of thinking about acquiring a first-time donor, how do we think about taking somebody who learned about our institution, thought about attending, made a massive financial decision to do so, and then how do we think about, instead of acquiring a first-time donor, how do we think about taking somebody who's a $50,000 a year customer and converting them to a $100 a year customer, instead of thinking of them as a non-donor? And how do we then surround them with experiences, whether it's, what are our Terra chips, what are our handwritten notes, what are our socks, what can we do uniquely as institutions to add value to the lives of our constituents so that they are not only donating, but they are advocating to their peers about why they should give as well. And we have lots of ideas and examples that are emerging as we try to embrace a more holistic alumni journey. The focus on the top, it makes sense. When you're trying to achieve your June 30th revenue target and your capital campaign, I completely understand the pressure there, but I think that there is such an opportunity to transform the way that we treat the middle and lower middle of the pyramid that will have a near-term revenue impact, a near-term donor count impact, and a long-term major gift impact. Now, we're constantly trying to learn from the for-profit sector, and when you search sales and marketing funnel on Google, there's roughly 22 million results, okay? And when you research this space, and we've been building our company trying to leverage these themes, every for-profit company is thinking about their marketing and sales funnel. A lot of your enrollment colleagues are thinking about their enrollment funnel. There is so much data and examples of how marketing and sales can be better integrated to drive results in the near term and the long term by embracing this kind of approach. But so much of the strategy and budget and technology in the advancement sector has been focused on that top 2 to 5% of our constituents, which is why the vast majority of everyone else are just receiving more generic messaging. And we think that, as we discussed last year, and as we're going to continue to champion over the coming years, there's a tremendous opportunity to flip the giving pyramid and really think about a giving funnel that creates better advancement outcomes in the near term, but a much better long-term donor experience. The way that we're going to do that is by focusing on engagement, not just digital engagement, but it has never before been easier to reach your audience with the right message at the right time. How do we marry offline and online engagement in a way that is not over here and being done by the alumni engagement team, but is really at the top of our giving funnel? And as that engagement occurs, how can we automate and streamline the qualification of those prospects so we understand of the people that are raising their hands and expressing interest in our institution, which need to be routed to the annual fund with a better appeal, a better message, better segmentation, which need to be routed to new positions like digital gift officers that reflect more of an inside sales approach, where you can reach people at a higher volume with great personalization at a much lower cost than a traditional major gift program. Which of those folks need to be qualified and assigned over to our major gift team and added to discovery portfolios? And then how do we make sure that our solicitations, when we make the ask, whether it's annual fund or major gift, that it really is oriented around donor interests, which can be inferred through engagement data in ways that's never before been possible. And then ultimately, how do we retain those people and create great stewardship experiences so that we can build that lifetime loyalty and advocacy? That's what we're going to talk about today. And over the last year in particular, the examples of success across the giving pyramid have been coming into our office on a daily basis. And I wanted to share a couple of those today. As it relates to engagement, we've now tracked across our customer base over 170 million interactions on Facebook, okay? And that had never been done before, and we started it on a really small scale, 170 million interactions. But this goes way beyond Facebook, and what we're going to be talking about in our product roadmap is how we move and marry online engagement like Facebook, add signals from platforms like Twitter, but also marry data from offline event engagement sources, email engagement sources to really create a more holistic view of engagement. But at Wesleyan University, they were able to take a list of 2,000 people who were basically completely disengaged with Wesleyan. And they took that 2,000 person group and they added them to some Facebook marketing campaigns and other engagement campaigns, and they re-engaged 300 people in an incredibly low-cost manner via some of these channels through storytelling, and they were able to convert many of those people into donors. And it's a great example where mail wasn't working, phone wasn't working, email wasn't working, but some of these new channels have been really effective. At Virginia Commonwealth, and Parks is here, they have taken alumni events and really turned them into top-of-funnel prospect discovery opportunities for their major gift team. And he's launched a program called Elevate, which is a 23-city tour all over the world. And they have really been focused on identifying pockets of donors that have never been visited before, understanding what industries those people work in, creating events that align with those interests, and then really doing targeted outreach to get the right people in the room, to qualify them and make sure that there's follow-up for gift officers. Thinking of alumni relations as lead generation, while at the same time creating a better, more relevant experience for your alumni because the content relates to what their professional interests are. They've 10x'd their typical event attendance in this work. Parks is here, and we'll be happy to share more. At Cornell University, this is a recent example. We actually just heard about it this week, but I think it's reflective of ways that digital can actually support engagement via frontline fundraisers as well. Keith Hannon, who isn't here today because he thought he was getting inducted into his high school baseball Hall of Fame, but that's actually not this weekend, has been moving into, he recently moved into a role as a frontline gift officer. At one point, he was managing the Cornell social media platforms for the alumni group, their Twitter handle, their Facebook handle. He has moved all the way from top-of-funnel engagement down to major gift fundraising. And he's trying to use some of the same tricks he learned in digital engagement to make the most of his frontline experience. And so what he's been doing, working in athletics fundraising, is before he goes out and visits prospects, he walks down to the coach's office of the respective team, and he gets the coach to do a 30, 60, 90-second selfie video on Keith's phone. He goes out to St. Louis, meets people who he's never met before. He's just the new gift officer. And as they sit down, before they start talking about their stewardship and future donations, Keith slides his phone across and says, "Hey, I've got a message. Somebody wanted to say hi." Free, simple, faculty. It could be coaches, other people that are involved in the community. It could be the president. How do you bring campus down to the donors table in a really streamlined and low-cost way. So these are the examples that we get excited about because that's the equivalent of the Terra chips or the handwritten note, but way more compelling and totally scalable. Once we engage people, we need to qualify them, and we are doing a lot of work at EverTrue to integrate new data sources that are going to support more streamlined, more automated qualification. We are moving out of the era where you do a well screening every 3 to 5 years. And we're moving into an era where there's constantly a well screening happening in the background. And we're moving into an era where the CRMs are going to update themselves, and we are going to play a huge role in that. And one example is a partnership that we're establishing with a firm called Windfall Data, who is represented today. And they have been incredibly original and successful in their perspective of how they're using data to identify high net worth households. Not just real estate value, but really going down to a whole new level of data that is allowing them to look at 30 different attributes and get net worth data that it just hasn't been done before. But that data by itself is helpful. We think when integrated with platforms like ours, it can be transformative. And in some of our initial work, we took 2 million records from the EverTrue system with a beta group that has been collaborating on this. And we identified 300,000 households that have over $1 million in net worth. Not $1 million house, $1 million in net worth. 35% of those households were not assigned to a gift officer. And 20% of that audience is digitally engaged with their institutions. So these are incredible prospects who love you, have capacity, and in most cases have given less than $1,000. These are the people that are waiting to be visited. And one of the challenges with adding all of this digital engagement and all of these engagement signals is we have too many prospects. We don't have enough gift officers to get to the good prospects. And so we've got to be ruthless about prioritizing the next best group to see. And we think integrations like this can be helpful. The Windfall team is here. We have an early access program right now with some, I think, incredibly compelling pricing if trying to identify high net worth prospects is a priority right now. I'm happy to talk more about that. University of South Carolina, Sarah Wells, who's the director of development there, was looking at markets like Kansas City. Nobody had been to Kansas City in years, if ever. And she identified leveraging EverTrue, engaged people who had wealth, and found 47 people, met with 7 of them, and has one endowed fund ask already happening. And it's a great example of moving from engagement to qualification and through the giving funnel. Oregon is doing incredibly well with very rapid discovery work, spending 30 minutes a week, every 2 weeks, identifying 50 to 100 new prospects that have engaged, have wealth, and need to be prioritized relative to everyone else. The next step being assignment. 43% of the high-capacity, digitally engaged donors across our system are not assigned. Meanwhile, you've got gift officers chasing cold leads and really struggling in many cases. And so we have to get better at streamlining the assignment process. But there are some really neat examples. I don't know if anybody's followed what's been happening at the University of Iowa over the last couple of years with their children's hospital. It's been a pretty amazing story. Kelsey, who's a senior prospect management analyst, is here today. And she has been spending 5 hours per week over the last 6 months, identified 15 prospects in EverTrue, and there's already a 6-figure solicitation that has been made. And I think this role of prospect management, really moving beyond reactive research bios into proactively analyzing the data and pushing leads into gift officer portfolios and then tracking what happens is a key role in making a successful giving funnel. If you're thinking about how to make that role work at your institution, I'd encourage you to seek out Kelsey, and she and her colleagues will be sharing some of their work. Oklahoma State University, one of my favorite examples. They have an awesome aviation program, by the way. But Jacob Astley, who can't be here today, has been working with us for 3 years, and he has been as disciplined as anyone as tracking new major gift prospects he's identified in EverTrue. They've now created $50 million of major gift pipeline through prospects that they've identified and moved into portfolio. They've closed $300,000 in gifts, and there's $3 million in proposals outstanding. This is how the giving funnel should work. He couldn't do this if it weren't for the engagement work that his colleagues were doing that align with donor interests. He couldn't do it without wealth signals and historical giving patterns. But if he wasn't pushing those prospects into portfolios and then really tracking what happens, we could not cite stats like this. And I just want to comment, for years we've been asked, hey, can we get a usage report? Are people using EverTrue? And totally understand why you'd want to know that. These are the kinds of reports that we want to be talking about. I want to talk about revenue. I want to talk about engagement metrics. I want to talk about pipeline being created. You can't get that without usage, but these are the kinds of metrics that if you don't feel like you're getting from EverTrue today, or that your team hasn't quite been able to embrace, we are up for that challenge, and we want to work to have a slide like this for every single one of you. How much revenue has been closed, how much pipeline has been generated working with us. That is our challenge. And ultimately, it comes down to solicitation. University of Memphis, Susan is here, just achieved a $44 million fundraising result, all-time record, 42% increase in revenue year over year, and they're outperforming peer institutions by 25%. We are not going to take credit for that, but it has been a pleasure to see how well they've embraced our relationship management tools to be able to push us to add updates and make changes, but really empower their team to remove all excuses about why they're not getting out there, getting visits, and ultimately making solicitations and closing gifts. One of my favorite examples, Baylor is here. Their women's basketball team had an incredible run this March Madness, and they were at that time trying to figure out who should we be selling tickets to during this March Madness run. And they found all these people who were engaged with the Baylor women's basketball team on Facebook via EverTrue, gave those to Josh, who is focused on ticket sales and athletics fundraising, and they were able to convert 10% of people they reached out to as ticket sales, which is 3 times the national average, because they were able to find what people were interested in and make a relevant offer, and it's really exciting to see examples like this. And then ultimately, how do we retain people and create advocates? The measure of a healthy for-profit company is achieving a 90% retention rate, okay? 90%. Doesn't really matter if it's Spotify or Netflix or iTunes or whatever. They want to achieve at least a 90% retention rate, in many cases over 100% when you account for the revenue. But as we've analyzed data, and I'm sure many of you have seen this, higher ed is so far behind that. Most of our customers are in a 60 to 70% retention rate. And it's really inefficient. And I think in part, it's due to some of the challenges we talked about earlier about how people are being solicited and are we adopting new channels that align with donor interests. But this is something we have to collectively solve. There's no reason for people who've given in the past and love your institution that if we embrace the right channels and the right messaging, that we can't have goals to get close to 90%. There are many examples of schools that are experiencing declining donor count, but there are some really neat examples of schools that are increasing donor count, and those are the ones that we're going to try to learn from and share. Sean, who's a 40 under 40 recipient and is present today at Tufts University, has actually improved their alumni participation rate by 2,000 donors, 2 percentage points at a time when class sizes are rising, which is making it challenging to grow participation at many institutions. And they've increased donor count in 3 of the last 4 years. That's from 2015 to present at a time when many institutions have been declining. So we look forward to hearing more from Sean at Raise. And one of my favorite examples, the little engine that could, Millbrook School, one of our smallest customers, has been so impressive in establishing a peer-to-peer outreach program and really being laser focused on donor retention in a way that I've not seen elsewhere. And they've grown their annual fund participation to 43%. And most impressive, they are now achieving an 88% donor retention rate. And in part, it's because Deb has made it her life's mission to get to a 90% retention rate. And we've benchmarked Millbrook's performance relative to their independent school peers, many of whom are at a 40, 50, 60% retention rate. And part of the reason is they've got a real goal around it, and they're really focused on it. And so you're going to continue to hear us talking more and more about achieving much higher retention rates, which are going to improve donor count and revenue in the near term, but make a big impact on the major gift pipeline over time. So if Millbrook can do it, I know that other institutions can do it. This is a one-woman shop, basically, as it relates to the annual fund, but there's a lot of best practices that we think can be applied to institutions of all sizes. And ultimately, as we think about the next year at EverTrue, a huge part of our focus is going to be to continue to create the absolute best, most comprehensive, most helpful donor profile by taking data from your databases and bringing it to life through real-time integrations. And we've got some that we're announcing today, like Windfall, but there's so many more that we're going to be establishing soon. And then not only creating that unified profile, but putting it in interfaces that are as easy to use as any other consumer application that you all benefit from in your life. And one of the big areas of focus with TrueView has really been a combination of enrichment and engagement. How do we make sure that the data is as real-time and up-to-date as possible? And how do we bring in online and offline engagement sources that really will help fuel the top of your giving funnel? And so as it relates to engagement, we've integrated with Facebook, Eventbrite, Hustle. We've just added some integration work with Twitter. We've worked with companies like Switchboard and Graduate, Emma, and we're going to continue to pull in more and more engagement signals from the platforms that you use that should be integrated with donor insights in a more streamlined way. From an enrichment perspective, we just talked about Windfall, but there are an unprecedented number of companies that are getting really good at identifying consumer data and enriching that data, and we just don't think they've been applied effectively to the advancement sector. That's what we're working on. For example, with a recent integration that we've completed that allows us to infer donor interest based on their Twitter follower graph, we've been able to see people who are interested in venture capital, people who are interested in Tesla, people who are interested in different media platforms. And we also found that people that have expressed interest in their alma mater are 38% more likely to be donors. Yet there are all kinds of people who are actively following and engaging with your alma mater on Twitter who probably aren't being reached out to in a new way via the call center, for example. And so these are some of the gaps that we have to address as we add more and more data to the platform. We had a really neat podcast. I don't know if anybody's heard the Raise podcast that we've started recently, but you can go to evertrue.com/Chris Campbell from Oklahoma State University, who's talking about how they're really moving from a capacity-first approach to an engagement and interest-based approach. How do we really activate the giving funnel, qualify people based on who responds, and then make sure that every prospect in a gift officer's portfolio is as warm as possible? Doesn't mean that we don't still have to try to warm up the really ultra-high net worth people that maybe haven't been engaged, but for everybody else, we think that this is the new approach. We want to be on your team, and we want to move out of this phase where it's about usage metrics. If your goals are participation goals, that's what we want our goals to be. When you're talking to your customer success manager at EverTrue, that's what we want you to talk about. We need help with retention. We need help with pipeline development. We need help with better major gift officer productivity. And here are the numbers that we're trying to achieve. And the more that you can share your goals with our team so that we can make them our goals as well, I think the more successful that we will all be. And so our challenge to each of you is to think about examples at your institution where we can build this full funnel approach to advancement. And we showed lots of individual examples from different stages of the funnel to kick off today. But what we get more excited about is showing holistic examples where we can go from an interest or a need, surface interested prospects, leveraging online and offline engagement, qualify them, get them into portfolios, track them and see what happens, and have pipeline and revenue numbers that we can speak to. So throughout the course of today and tomorrow, I hope that you can go back on Monday and come up with an idea, a campaign, a challenge to your team that allows us to create a slide for you and your organization in advance of next year. So our objective is to flip the pyramid, and we're so excited to have you all here. I'm going to be monitoring the hashtag. We're at EverTrue. I'm at Brent Grinna. We're so excited to have you at Raise. Thank you.